Coming up on today's show.
And I have seen paper stuffed in every imaginable spot in people's homes. I've seen it stored in luggage even.
Well, some people, you've probably seen this, believe that they have one big pile of papers and they know their paper that they need is in there somewhere, so that's enough security for them.
So knowing what to keep comes down to what's most essential for your family and your business.
3 filing essentials today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to get really basic and talk about some essentials about filing. It's something that at Smead we're really passionate about, but a lot of people don't know where to start. They don't know what the basics are. So we are really going to dig into that in this episode, and we're going to bring on certified professional organizer Ellen DeLapp. Hello, Ellen. How are you today?
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. And of course, you are the current president of the National Association of Professional Organizers. Congratulations on that appointment.
President-elect, actually.
What's that?
President-elect. Working my way up.
You're not. Well, maybe by the time this thing is on, you will be. But yes. So when does that term officially start?
It officially starts in May of 2017.
Okay, well, good. I mean, so you have time. At least you don't have to go out and campaign like other people. I mean, you're the one. You're going to be the big kahuna there for that year. So we love working with the National Association of Professional Organizers because they are passionate about organizing. And Ellen, let's talk a little bit about filing essentials, because I'm sure when you go out in the field, you see that, of course, people have all kinds of disorganization, but when it comes down to getting things for papers filed up, what are some of the common things you see out there that people are overwhelmed with?
Well, it's really surprising. As much as we'd love to be paperless, it's really about how much paper comes in. It's just like a tsunami. It's unending, and it's just something people really get overwhelmed with. So not surprisingly, every single one of my clients, I work with paper on some level. Even my clients who have become as minimal with paper as they can. And I have seen paper stuffed in every imaginable spot in people's homes. I've seen it stored in luggage even. When people get completely overwhelmed, they start being super creative about where can I hide this stuff?
Yeah.
So when I'm working with clients, it almost always comes down to breaking through that feeling of being overwhelmed and creating really simple systems. But what's really essential is what we're going to talk about today. And as you know, we are passionate about helping our clients at the National Association of Professional Organizers. So thanks for sharing our team.
Absolutely. Well, I think about some people, you've probably seen this, believe that they have one big pile of papers and they know their paper that they need is in there somewhere, so that's enough security for them. But I don't think we want to get beyond that. We want people to really have that peace of mind about it. So we have 3 filing essentials we're going to talk about. What is number 1?
Well, the first thing I think is to know what to keep and how long to keep it. And that's very hard because every situation is a little different. So I ask people to really think about their accountant or their lawyer, because many of us have very complicated and we're doing papers for other people in our family, possibly our parents, possibly a close friend. So knowing what to keep comes down to what's most essential for your family and your business. When you're thinking about that, there's a realm of ways to find that answer to a certain 2 references. One of them is on Oprah.com, Morgan Stern. It's called the ABCs of Important Papers, and it's really an extensive list. And I think most of us have so many questions and get stalled in the decision-making about papers, which is another part of the problem. The list is that ABCs of Important Papers, and also on realsimple.com, there's 5 simpler record-keeping solutions, and that's about your financial papers. Financial papers are the ones you have to keep the longest, unfortunately.
Right. So
a good resource. Your accountant, your lawyer, looking online is the first step to knowing what to keep so you can get rid of as much as possible. Because I like to tell people, our goal isn't to keep as much. Our goal is to eliminate as much.
Give me your biggest amount of paper that you've seen someone holding on to and how you dealt with it.
Well, my first client was a former engineer, and I still work with him today on his paper. So paper is something that is very difficult to conquer. We worked in his home office, which was stacked to the brim with paper. I mean, it really was amazing how much paper could get into a small space. And actually, that client had filing cabinets, but all of them were empty. Not one thing was in a drawer. So as we worked, we created a really simple system for him. I've also worked with accountants and lawyers themselves, or even therapists, that they get really bogged down in paper. Some of my clients are such people that the paper is so boring to them that when we work together, it makes it more alive and easier to answer their questions.
Well, when you're dealing with someone, of course, there are, the IRS has guidelines, and financial advisors, we talked about that, have guidelines, and there's, lists that you can get, like we'll reference those in our show notes as well. But are there questions that you can have someone ask themselves as they're sorting through paper to maybe help them decide whether they should keep it or not?
Well, one of the first questions I ask is, where can we find this again? So if we didn't have that piece of paper, there's so many things online now that we can find that are so much easier, especially with documents that have to do with our taxes, like our mortgage expense. Usually we can create an online account that we'll be able to log on and find that document if we don't keep up with it when it arrives in the mail.
Right. So you've got the trying to figure this out, so asking questions. Is there any other techniques? We looked at the lists online that people need to know as far as how to decide whether to keep something or not. I mean, do you have to get yourself in a unemotional mood where you can make good decisions?
Well, I say to take paper in small doses, so that if you can work for just 15 minutes and plow through a small stack. Another thing I think is people tend to spread their papers all over the house, and it gets very disconcerting. So if you can bring them all together, as uncomfortable as that might make you feel, then just sort through them for 15 minutes at a time. So when you think about the things that is where people get really stuck, like we have a lot of personal interests, like hobbies, and we might redecorate our house, or we want parenting advice, or some kind of lifestyle advice. I think that's where people get the most stuck on their papers, and those papers are the least valuable because we have so many blogs and other ways to have resources as people that we might know that are trainers or in any walk of life that we want to get more knowledgeable about. So rather than have those resources stagnant in your file cabinet, just find other ways that you're going to find that information rather than on paper.
Well, and I think this probably segues into scanning and, kind of what's the rule for, maybe someone says, oh, I might need that someday. It's not necessarily an important paper, but it's important to them. And they want how do you set up a scanning system for somebody and determine, how, first of all, what to keep and what to scan, but how you organize it within a scanning system?
So I use the same categories for scanning as I do for paper. When I'm thinking about scanning, I always talk about, is it scan worthy? Is it something we want to keep for the duration? So I apply that to these categories. So my categories are home and auto. This is for our personal files.
Okay.
Financial, and then personal. So home and auto, anything relating to your house. So there's things we do want to keep for the duration for our house. Any remodeling and repairs, things that we've invested in our house so that down the road we'll be able to take those into account when we sell our house. Our auto, we want to keep up with repairs, maintenance, the purchase price. But a lot of times we're going to the same place to have our auto repaired, and there's lots of online tools. So we may or may not keep those things and scan them in. Okay. The second category, financial, we would scan those in by the name of the institution or by banking, retirement, again, big categories. Those are things I think are definitely scan worthy because we want to keep them for the long time. And then personal falls into the realm of things that have to do with the living things in your house. So it's the people in your house, it's your pets, it's the things like your church and the other interests that you have. So the least scan worthy might be in personal. Keep up with your medical documents. That's very scan worthy. Right. You might keep up with the things to do with schools, like your kids' grades and college applications, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I cut you off there, so go ahead and finish.
So in each category, I first set up the file folders in the digital access in your computer. And then I go ahead and have people scan in. And when you're scanning in, you have to rename. So scan a little, rename a little. It's a little easier process.
Okay.
So.
Great. Well, that was kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I know that that's one of the techniques to help you get rid of, some of the things you don't necessarily need, but you still want to keep them. Now, one thing we haven't talked about, and we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about different types of paper files, because not all files are created equal, and I know there's different types that we refer to. So we'll do that after this break. We're with Ellen DeLapp talking about the 3 essential filing essentials that we need to set up a file system, and we'll be right back. Now there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We're back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about the 3 filing essentials that you need to set up a file system to get organized. Now, before the break, we talked about our first essential, which is really knowing what to keep and what to get rid of. But we're bringing back Ellen DeLapp, certified professional organizer, professional-organizer.com. And Ellen, not all files are equal, because some files we need to keep a long time, others are short term. What are some of those, category might be, or types of files that we have, and how do we treat them differently?
Well, thanks for coming alongside that, John, because I think there's a lot of information there that we wanted to share too about. There's first one kind of file that I talk about that is called the reference file. Now, that reference file is the file of things that you want to have easy access to. And that's what we primarily call filing, okay? So those are the things that you might have a file cabinet for and drawers. The second type of filing I call archive, with things you want to keep the duration, but you don't need easy access to. So just by pulling those 2 apart, often I find people say, I created a filing system in 2001 and I never went back there again. So part of the things that are in that filing system are probably part of your archive files that you want to move over so that you don't have to touch them. You only have them, access to them when you need them, which hopefully you won't. But the rest of your filing, I like to call reference. So it's something that you want to refer back to within like a year or so. And so there's kind of like this turnover that goes between reference to archive.
Okay, yeah. Explain that transition a little bit, maybe an example of that.
Okay, perfect example is tax time. Okay. So tax time is when we're going through our files, our reference files, to find information that are going to become part of our tax package that we send to our accountant or you prepare our taxes with. And then after we're done with that, we move everything in that tax preparation and the finalized tax document, even if you have an electronic version, to the archive file. Usually occurs February, March, once you've gotten all of the documents that you need in the mail or that you've accessed electronically so that you're ready to prepare your taxes. And I really recommend setting up a time to do that for a couple hours each year, because that way it just keeps your file system up to date and smoothly running, and no one gets a paper cut. So it's much easier, less dangerous too.
Well, and there's probably, maybe at that point, are you also like purging some more? Maybe you don't need the reference file, or maybe you have some archive files that, I don't really need those anymore. How do you kind of apply that, the purging, ongoing maintenance piece of it?
I agree. I think purging needs to be done on a pretty regular basis. It's just kind of like the rest of our house when we're getting rid of stuff. So every time you're going into your files, it's a good time to pull something out. Let's say you're putting in this year's insurance documents. You can pull out and shred several of the other items that are in there that are out of date. When people ask me about shredding, by the way, I tell them that they should definitely shred things that have any kind of account number on them, So that's a very important tool also. A lot of people ask, do I need my name? Should I shred it if it has my name on it? And there's definitely a school of thought that goes along with that. So you should do what you feel most comfortable with, but for sure if it has an account number on it. But you're right, at tax time, it's also a good time to do like a really big culling out of paper so that either shred them yourself. I believe in commercial size shredder for everyone's home because it just gets the job done. And most of our shredding is recyclable as well. So that's another good thing.
Right. Now, do you do anything different as far as category headings and filing headings in an archive file versus your reference file that we kind of talked about before?
I make groups again and categories in my archive file. So a lot of times people want to archive things that are having to do with their financials because we have to keep them so long. We don't necessarily need every year of your financials in your file cabinet. So that's a good thing to archive. And I usually group it by category, financials, but also by year. I use file totes a lot for that. Those are the plastic bins specifically designed for filing. A lot of people like to also archive things that have to do with their personal history, like keepsakes, so to speak, which is a whole category of itself of papers. So those might be by person, like cards, just different pieces of art that your kids might do before you turn them into something else that's a different kind of keepsake. So yes, I definitely group them in the bin. I label the bin with my label maker on top, and then I store them in a less accessible spot. So that less accessible spot might be an attic, a basement, the top of a closet, something like that.
Now, I've heard some people, like when they do these, they'll have like a box number, and maybe they'll have an index somewhere. Do you propose anything like that?
Yes, I think that's great, especially for some of my more detailed clients. They really like having that list so they never have to think about where did I put such and such. It's just one more way for them to have peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay. Any other tips regarding archive versus reference files, the difference, and how about like preserving? You know, is there certain kind of tools you use to preserve certain files so don't want them to fade out or that kind of thing if they're really super important but they're more archive oriented?
Well, I usually use the file boxes that are intended for paper because they're a certain size and paper can be super heavy. Inside the file boxes, of course, I use the hanging files. Smead, they're some of my favorite. And then inside that hanging file, I use the tabs and my label maker. I also use file folders if necessary. So great preservation. The main thing I keep away from is cardboard boxes because they do tend to attract silverfish. And then I just try to also be safety conscious in terms of stacking the boxes, things like that.
Okay, great.
Not too high.
Well, listen, we've kind of covered 2 of the 3 filing essentials, but we're kind of out of time here. I want to continue this in another podcast episode, in our next episode. Are you willing to come back for that?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Great.
I appreciate it.
And before we go, why don't you just let people know a little bit about your company and how they can get a hold of you?
Thanks. I work in the greater Houston area. My business is professional-organizer.com, and I'd love to invite you to my blog where I'm sharing a little bit more about these filing essentials and other topics. But I also work virtually with clients throughout the country. So I'd love to help you, especially with paper. It's a very manageable project.
Yeah, I did notice the blog article as well, and we will link that in our show notes as well. If you are listening to this and maybe aren't at a computer right now, you can go to smead.com/podcast for all the show notes. We'll reference the Oprah site with Julia Morgenstern and all those different resources we talked about in the beginning of the show, and we have more to go. I know we're only supposed to do 3 essential filing essentials here, but we've only covered 2, and we're going to come back next time with the 3rd and final essential and wrap this up because filing essentials are important. We are passionate about those, so come back on our next episode of Keeping You Organized.